We are here today with Justin Fike, whose books, hold on, I got this, the Far Shore Chronicles, because I can do words, and also Fire in the Dawn, Twin Skies Trilogy, look really fantastically fun. So tell us a little bit about yourself and what you're working on at the moment, and then we'll get into things upcoming shortly.
Sure. So like you said, my name is Justin Fike. I am an indie author, proudly, happily married to indie authorship. Have been for, I published Fire in the Dawn in 2017. Okay. So 3 years now, but I don't know if I should say embarrassed to say, it's pretty normal. I worked on that book for, in one form or another, about 15 years. Oh, wow. Because it was really the book that made me want to learn how to write well enough to write it, Yeah. I had the story idea in high school, and then that kind of kicked me off on this journey of I have this really cool story idea and all my writing sucks so bad. So I'm going to have to get good so I can actually write this thing. So I studied creative writing a ton in college, always as a hobby, never as this is my career path or anything crazy like that. It was just, I love this. This is my outlet. It's what I want to do when I have time to do something I want to do for myself. Right. Got a master's in creative writing at Oxford several years ago, which was an amazing experience. Really enjoyed that. Learned a ton.
I bet. Well, gosh, I didn't know Oxford was a good creative writing program to do. I knew they were good in the languages.
Yes, they have a fantastic creative writing program. Actually, I highly recommend anyone who's interested in that looking into it, because it's not an American's academic program. It's actually structured really, really well. I mean, not knocking obviously there are American schools that have great creative writing programs.
It's completely different. Yeah, I did my master's at Edinburgh, so.
Oh, okay. So yeah, so you have you know what I'm talking about. It's just a completely different ethos. I very, very heavily focused on, right. What I liked about that program is that it had a really broad, so they divided all of your work up into major disciplines. So even if you came in, I came in as a fiction writer, there were screenwriters, there were poets, and you did everything. And they actually forced you to work outside of your preferred discipline first for a long time, until you could ultimately end up doing what you wanted to do as your year 2 final project. So I actually wrote about half of Fire in the Dawn was my final project for my master's degree. Okay. But it was great. I learned so much about language and lyric timing and plotting and scene setting from doing screenwriting and all this other stuff. And it was just it wasn't a lot of hey, let's just read a bunch and sit around and talk about our thoughts about other people's writing. It wasn't just a critique class. It was a very, very heavy writing focused program with some fantastic instructors and some really awesome people that I'm still close friends with that were really great. So that was really cool. Came out of that and took another about 2-3 years, and then managed to get the book done just before we had our first baby. I published it 2 weeks before we delivered our daughter. Oh, wow. I was bound and determined. Somehow it seemed really important to there was something if I don't do this, maybe I'll never do it or something, this, it's not it's going to get any easier after this. Right. So we kind of hunkered down, got it done. But yeah, so been writing since then. And really enjoy it.
Very fun. Background. Very fun. Yeah. Okay. So now, the Fire in the Dawn. Is book 2 out, or am
It is not. No. Okay. So it's planned as a trilogy. I have them all plotted. When I finished that book, I realized that I had done a pretty decent job, I think, of learning how to write well, and knew absolutely nothing about publishing. Made so many mistakes and just didn't know what I was doing. So I decided I wanted to shift gears and work on a different series that would be structured a little bit more fast-paced, where each individual title was a little shorter and more episodic, so that it would give me a chance to put out more content and write a whole series and actually have it put out, so that I could kind of learn the ropes on the publishing side, and then circle back around and finish that series. So I'm really excited to get back and finish it. I have been working on the second book, but the Twin Skies trilogy is a very classic, high epic fantasy, traditional original fantasy world. It's very involved, takes a lot of work and a lot of thought. Not that the Far Shore Chronicles doesn't, but
It's different.
It's different, right? It's the Far Shore Chronicles is like the Princess Bride to your Lord of the Rings, if you want to think of analogies, you know.
Yeah.
So
both entertaining.
It's just a different style, and I have so much fun with it. The books are a little bit they're faster, they're just a little easier to plot and put out more consistently. So I just decided I wanted to like kind of learn more about how to do that well, which has been great. I'm really glad I made that shift. I've learned a ton. And it's been a really good experience working on this other series, which should be wrapped up next year. And then my plan is to switch back over.
Oh, okay. So how many books are going to be in the Far Shore?
12. I have 12 planned. Yeah. I have basically the first 6 more or less written. I'm finishing up 6 currently. And I sort of have it divided up into 2 volumes. So the first 6 books is one major story arc. And then the second 6 books will jump forward a couple of years and will be a second major story arc, kind of season 1, season 2, if you want to think about it that way.
I like that.
Yeah, it's been. I really like the model. Honestly, it's been really fun, and I've gotten really good feedback from readers that it's kind of right in that sweet spot of like, it's not. They're not short books. They're about 50,000 words each. Like they're not like novellas or anything, but they're not, 150,000 word like epic fantasy tomes either. And working really hard to make sure that each book is structured well so that you have a really clear storyline. It moves quickly. The pace is fast and engaging. And then each book wraps up. Like I don't like cliffhangers in the sense of like, let me just sort of like not finish the story. So you want to get that. I hate that. I mean, I should, every author needs to do their own thing, whatever, but I don't like it. So I work really hard to make sure each book is like comfortably wrapped up with enough hints and threads about kind of how it ties into what's about to happen next that you kind of want to keep going and continue the story. So so far I feel like that's been working out pretty well.
Yeah. Well, now you better actually tell us about the general plot of each series, because otherwise people are going to go, well, this is great, but I have no idea what's going on.
Yes. Sure. So Fire in the Dawn, I can summarize that pretty quickly. It's very heavily inspired by East Asian mythology and culture and history, which was my undergraduate focus, was medieval European and East Asian history. Ooh, so that was just like, that's what I lived and breathed for 4 years. And so I love that world. The main character, his name is Chiron. He's sort of a lost prince, if you will. He's the last surviving heir of this noble family that was massacred in a political coup, when he was a child. So he lives in hiding in the city that his family once ruled as a peasant. And the series is basically his story of struggling to like reclaim. Initially, it's like his goal to reclaim his family's lost honor and fortune and name and everything, his place in the world. And then, of course, things get more complicated than that. And
they always get more complicated.
More, no spoilers, but more significant things than that start to play out, and it kind of, end of the world stuff looms in that trilogy. So that's a really fun one. And then the Far Shore Chronicles is based off of a concept that I had several years ago. When I ran I like really enjoy tabletop gaming, like D&D and stuff. So I was running a game for some friends, and I put a ton of work into coming up with this unique setting that was the premise of which was like, so what if taking the kind of colonial discovery of a new world idea, but instead of just like, oh, it's a new world that's sort of like our world, but just, maybe developed differently, that when we get off the boat, we find all of the monsters and magic and mythology and folklore and fairy tales and all the stuff from our old legends and stories that we always assumed were just stories. They're here, and they have their own kingdoms and their own races. It's so like elves and dwarves and dragons and trolls and all the stuff. It's all here. And then we kind of, throughout the story, you kind of find out that like, so the human setting is sort of inspired by like Byzantine, like late post-Roman Empire. And they kind of had this grand crusade that's, again, it's just part of their legend. It's like kind of, you think old mythology. It turns out it was actually true. They really did sort of like annihilate all of the mythic races in their world and like eliminate magic. And then it became their folklore. But over on this other continent on the other side of the ocean, they're all still there. So Far Shore itself is the only human outpost in Danann. It's like the lone human, like the Jamestown of this world.
Sure.
Surrounded by all of these races and places and creatures and magic and stuff that they don't really understand and kind of hate and think is evil, maybe because like it's probably the gods don't like it, maybe, but maybe they do. Everyone's trying to figure out this world because it's only been about 60 years that this colony has been in place.
Oh, okay, sure.
And then the story follows Charity, who is an orphan and a thief who is in prison, and because people tend to die in Far Shore a lot. They kind of have resorted to it's like half a penal colony. They send a lot of their like petty criminals to Far Shore as indentured servants to like work off their debt, and then they can kind of live there instead. So she gets caught and sent to Far Shore as a prisoner, and then because she's sassy and has a temper, she gets herself in trouble pretty fast. And ends up in the first book, she ends up sentenced to their arena to like fight to the death, and manages to survive, but I won't spoilers and stuff, but in a way that kind of kicks off a larger adventure. She's basically blackmailed into going on a suicide mission out into the wilds of Danann with a group of misfit outcasts that kind of like from different races that were also prisoners, and they kind of form this ragtag initially we'll only not kill each other because we have to work together to survive. But we don't like it. To eventually they kind of just become this weird, scrappy family that watches each other's backs and kind of carry through the whole series as a team. So that's the sort of Far Shore Chronicles premise. The things that happened, they're kind of unintentional consequences from that mission, sort of unleash a great evil, and then they have to spend the rest of volume 1 dealing with that problem, basically.
I feel like you just described life as it's pretty much just unintended consequences,
right? Yeah, hey, look, we're just trying to survive. Oops, we actually caused a big problem, and I guess maybe now we have to sort of try and fix it, give or take.
Then causes more problems, and et cetera
down the drain it goes. So it's a lot of fun. I love Charity. She's my girl. She's the best.
That'll be fun. And those are okay. Hold on, let me get my calendar straight. Those are released on the.
Yep. So I had actually published them myself initially, the first 4 books I had written and published. And then I recently signed a contract with Fallbrant Press, which I'm really excited about. And that is involving republishing the initial books, and then we'll go on from there. So I'm going to be releasing the first 3 books as a box set on August 13th. So that's a digital box set and an audiobook, which I'm really excited about. That's what I've been kind of busting my butt on. I did all the narration and all my own editing and everything for the volume 1, box set number 1, which is books 1 through 3.
Right.
It was a whole fascinating learning curve.
I bet. I can play around with audio a little bit, but doing an audiobook, wow.
Yeah, it was a bit of a crash course because we had a tight turnaround. It's funny. I was actually up until about 1:30 last night because all the files that I sent off were fine, except that I had done 1 or 2 things wrong formatting wise. They sounded fine, but in terms of what ACX wants or Amazon Audio Services, they weren't accepting them. And we had to get them up to this morning, so I had to stay up a long time yesterday to go through one by one and change 3 things in 30 or 50 something different audio files. So it's been interesting, but I've learned a lot, and hopefully the next set should go a lot faster and be a lot simpler. But I had a ton of fun with the audiobook part. I did a lot of acting in school. I have this fairly long acting background. I did a lot of theater and stuff. So I had a ton of fun coming up with an original character voice for each of the core casts. I have cultural analogs for each of the different races. So the dwarves are Vikings that roam the oceans in their giant dwarven longships, and everyone's scared of dwarves. It's kind of a little twist on everything. So I made sure that the dwarves have kind of a Finnish Swedish accent, and playing around with different things. And
that is one of the hardest accents for me to do.
It's really hard.
Favorite to hear.
It would have been, I'm not going to claim that I did it perfectly, but that was what I was attempting. If you'd come by my house at some random time of day over the past 3 weeks, you would have just heard me saying the same line over and over again, trying to figure out the right way to say it that actually sounds good. And it was a challenge, but it was fun. I enjoyed the recording part. That part was actually a lot.
Yeah.
Technical
How long
side.
did it take?
About a month. I did it in about a month, but that's, I mean, for 3 books. So
I
probably could have done it fast. I mean, it's not surprisingly a little challenging to find completely silent time in a house with a 3-year-old and a 3-month-old and a dog. So it was always like, okay, I can record for 2 hours while they're napping, and like set up my little, soundproofing sound baffled booth, and like try to get stuff done in little windows like that. It was finding the time was a little bit harder. But we got it done. And
well, there you go. Well done. Wow. Doing an audiobook. That's impressive.
It was fun. I hope people will enjoy it. I think I always love you don't see authors narrate their own books that often because, it's a different skill set and stuff. Yeah. Well, it's just a different set of, like, a different thing. Like, just because you can write a book well, doesn't necessarily, it's just a happy coincidence that, like, I was able to kind of pull off both, I think. But I'm really excited about it. Like, there's something fun about being able to read your own books where you sort of know even just like the inflection and the tone and the pace of, like, what you had in mind.
Yeah.
And getting to hear it, like, even for myself, it was like, I gave myself chills a couple times of like, oh my gosh, I just heard that out loud. Like that amazing moment where, like, they have that thing and then she says that, and like that scene in the climax that I loved writing so much, like actually hearing it and hearing it played back was like, oh, that's really cool. Ooh. That makes me so happy.
Ooh, fun. So, oh, wow. Yeah, I like seeing authors who can do all of the different things, because it doesn't happen all that often. But I feel like the authors know their work better than everyone else, and so therefore it's gonna sound so much better. Although
you would hope
professional narrators are
sure, and that's capable. The thing. Like I'm fully aware that, like, I'm guessing a fully professional narrator probably could have done things a little more, like, technically correct, maybe in some places. But I'm hoping that, my general enthusiasm and, like, subject matter knowledge maybe might make up for the make up the difference on that, just in terms of, like, the listening experience. So, and I've had several beta listeners already listen through, and they say it sounds good and they like it and everything's sounding okay. So I'm happy.
Done. Wow, that's exciting. Very cool. And that'll come out the same time as
both on the 13th. Which is cool. I know a lot of people, especially these days, like, really enjoy audiobooks. I really enjoy audiobooks, and I've wanted to do them for forever, but it's expensive and time consuming to get it produced. So it's one of those things I had kind of assumed was going to be a way down the road sort of thing. Yeah. So I'm very excited to see that happen.
Yeah. I like the fact that audiobooks are becoming more normalized, because I feel like it opens up a lot more people to the world of reading. People who don't want to sit still and just like, read text, read a book. I have a lot of people in my family who are like,
Well, and even, like, it opens up the possibility for getting your stories in different windows. Like, I know for me, I have I don't get nearly as much reading time as I would like or historically have had.
Right.
But with an audiobook, it's like, well, I need to, here's my set of, like, errands I need to run or, like, things I have to do, but I can have one ear in and listen to a book that I've been wanting to listen to. And it just opens up more windows to get story time in, which is happy. So I think all formats have their benefits, and, it's nice to be able to offer multiple formats to people.
I would think, just completely random thought, but I would think that, interpretive, like, theater production, just here, let's take the book and do like a campfire and storytelling.
Right.
I think that would be really fun.
Yeah, for sure. Actually, so I have a good friend of mine who's a professional audio engineer, and I've been talking with him for a while about the idea of doing, like, not just an audiobook, but a full, like, an old radio drama style where you have a full voice cast and you do sound effects for things. Because I actually wrote a couple radio plays for my master's and really enjoyed it, like, thinking about the sound cues and everything to flesh out the story. So we've been kind of going back and forth on that, and I have some ideas that it's a lot more work, obviously. But it was so fun, right? To get to hear it that way, where each character actually has a voice actor who's doing that character, and you have a lot of, like, different sound effects and sound ambiance as you're listening. So it's more of a full, like, somewhere in between an audiobook and a movie, I think would be really cool. Ooh. Like, I would love that. So
that would be very cool. Okay, now I'm going to go advocate for
more people need to do this.
Radio dramas.
It's such a cool format. Like, if you go, I don't know if you ever listened to any, like, old, like, 1930s, 1940s radio drama in that format, but it's just so interesting, and there's something about, like, my professor called it the imaginative soundscape, and I was like, man, that's exactly what it is.
I got a couple of Terry Pratchett radio dramas that the BBC had done.
Yes, the BBC does such good stuff for this. I've listened to some of those. They're amazing.
Yeah, I listened to those, and then I saw the series, the new one they did on Amazon, and I was like, wait a second. This is different.
Yeah.
It feels weird.
It's so, I don't know, I find it so entertaining, that style where you just kind of like, you flesh out and color in the audio with more than just narration. I don't know. That could be really cool. So we'll see. I've been thinking about that. Maybe when I do the audio stuff for the Twin Skies trilogy when it's finished.
Right.
Hopefully.
Well, if it ever happens, let me know, because
I will. I'll send you a line. It finally happened.
Yes. All right. That's going to be the new thing. I'm going to push
this is the train we're on now.
Yep, radio dramas. Oh, wow, that's very exciting. And of course, it's a completely different style because you have to cut out a lot of the descriptive elements.
Right. You don't. Yeah, there's a lot of different aspects where you have, sound cue of like, instead of like, oh, the car engine this, it's like, here's a sound block, like here's an audio cue. Yeah. It's different, but it's fun.
Oh, very exciting. Very exciting. Okay, so your two different fantasy styles are, well, quite different.
They really are. And it's a little bit of a challenge, right? Because I know I've had some people who were like, because I had a group of fans who loved Fire in the Dawn, and then I started Far Shore, and some of them were like, this is also really fun, and others were like, I'm not happy with this, because it's just, I don't enjoy it, it's so different. And then when I started releasing Far Shore books, and like people would read 1, 2, and 3, and they're waiting for the next one, some people went and read Fire in the Dawn. I was like, I couldn't get through the first 2 chapters. And it's like, I'm like, I don't blame you. They're very different. Like, some people love one or the other. Some people love both. I personally, my taste is extremely eclectic. Like, I love all good. I mean, fantasy is my main genre, but I also love sci-fi. I love old style mystery novel. I like crime fiction. I love everything that's just like good writing, good stories.
Yeah.
So, but I get that, like, for some people, they kind of have their sweet spot of what they enjoy, and when an author does multiple varying styles, it can be a little jarring because you think you're going to love something because you love what they did, and then you read the other thing and it's like, this is really different. So I try my best to explain that distinction so people kind of go in aware, but to a certain degree it sort of is what it is.
Well, I know for creating author brands, sometimes people have problems with authors who do different things, even with different genres. Oh, you do science fiction and fantasy, or you do mystery and thriller, or what?
Right.
Mystery and thriller are often paired together, but mystery and sci-fi. But like,
depending on how hard you go into one camp or the other, they can still be pretty different. Right.
Yeah, and it's always curious to me because I like reading all of the stuff, and I like writing all of the stuff, and okay, I know that people have very specific things of what they like and don't like, but do you really want to get mad at the author for trying different things?
Right. Yeah. Well, I think so. To me, a lot of what it comes down to is just reader expectation. Like, and I think that's the author's job as much, because it's easy to be unconscious competent. Like, you kind of are aware of what your thing is, but it takes a lot of work, weirdly enough, to be able to clearly and consciously explain, here is what this is, here is like what the emotional experience of reading this story is going to be like, and to explain that through your book cover, and to explain it through your book blurb, and right up front, like the tone you set in your languaging choice. Just, I think, so it's like, the way I look at it is like, if you ask me for a chocolate ice cream cone and I give you a vanilla one, you'll be like a bit disappointed because it's not exactly what you asked for. If I give you a slice of pizza, you'll be quite disappointed. Like, it's technically food, but it's definitely not. If I give you like, here's a cup of dirt, you'd be really upset. But the only difference between those three things is how far it diverges from what you expected in the first place. So if I know I have some author friends, and we've talked about this, because like, technically my series is like shorter books, but I haven't gotten a lot of negative review responses about the length. I know other authors who write books whose word count is the same or sometimes even slightly higher than mine, who get a lot of negative reviews about the length. Really? Even though the length is technically the same. And I think it's because the way their blurb, their description of their book sounds more epic fantasy, and it promises certain things that subconsciously, because readers are really well educated. Like when you read a lot, you know what certain things sound like to you, certain words or certain phrases or certain, like if it has a certain tone, you go in expecting something. And if you don't get it, it's frustrating because it's, it's just that feeling of like, this isn't what I thought it was going to be.
Right.
So yeah. I think there's ways of trying to be as clear as possible about what the kind of the emotional experience of that thing is. So that hopefully people go in with open eyes, knowing what it's going to be like, and then their expectation is met, and that's the ideal. I mean, you can't do it perfectly, but I do think there's ways to be better at that, so that it's less jarring for readers, maybe moving from one style to the other of what the author does.
Yeah, although a lot of that depends on the cover and the blurb, as you said.
Right.
And those are hard.
It's really hard. It's really, really hard. But even things like originally when I first was working on getting Far Shore Chronicles ready, I wrote the book blurbs in third person because that's pretty normal. And I didn't love it because it's something about it, like it felt more of that like kind of the Far Shore Chronicles are first person told from Charity's perspective, and her voice is very unique, and her attitude comes through constantly. She's always like snarking off and being herself. And I rewrote the blurbs in first person, and it felt so much better about it, even though it's not as normal. And I tested them with people and said, like, which one? And people really were like, oh, the first person ones, like that gives me such a better understanding of what these books are going to be like, because they're in her tone right up front. Like even in the blurb, you get her voice, and you get a better sense of what it's going to be like to read these. So if you read the book descriptions of Far Shore Chronicles books, and you go and read Fire in the Dawn's book description, like hopefully I did a reasonable job of making it pretty clear that like these are different and they're going to feel different when you read them.
Right.
But it's, it takes a lot of like trial and error and as much thought as possible put into those kinds of things. And,
the language matters.
Yes, it does.
Which makes my little linguist heart go,
yay! Word choice, intentional word choice for the win.
Yeah. I mean, enough exposure to the world of books, and you can get that, that understanding without having the formal education. But as you said, going through and seeing the different genres and the different mediums and whatnot, that probably helped a lot.
Definitely, and just reading a ton. I mean, I think. Well,
yes, that's always.
I think every author who just reads their head off is in a pretty good state already, because you have a much better understanding of like what your analogs are that you're working against, like comparing to, and what people are used to and stuff. So. Yeah,
always fun. All right, as far as other books, because we can, is there an author out there whose abilities you'd like to steal in order to make your stuff,
that much better?
Yeah.
Oh gosh, one. I have to pick one.
You can pick multiple. I'm not limiting your theft.
Oh, okay. So my quick heist list. Neil Gaiman is like a mad genius. And I adore, like, yes. I understand he's not to everyone's taste necessarily.
He is very distinctive.
I love his capacity to, when I finish reading something by Neil Gaiman, I walk around and for a little while I feel like I see the world differently, because he just pushes your perception so much with the way that he spins his stories and kind of thins that boundary between reality and fantasy, or reality and imagination. I feel like I would love to do maybe a little more of that. I came to writing from a very like left-brained, heavily plotting, like organized. Like, here's the story I'm going to tell. Thankfully, I've gotten off of that and gotten a lot better. But I would love to continue to get better at that. Guy Gavriel Kay is one of my absolute favorite all-time fantasy authors in the universe. He's amazing. He writes historical fantasy. Not many people do that. And so I think of Fire in the Dawn more in that kind of subgenre slice. His worlds are just stunning and so beautifully realized. Just the tapestry that he puts behind all of his stories are so rich and compelling. I try my best, but I definitely think I have a long way to go to be as good as he is at that. And then of course Jim Butcher. you know, the man, the myth, the legend. I love his books. I'm just a total sucker for really all of his books. I mean, I love the Dresden Files, but I love Codex Alera, and his new Aeronauts Windless series was really fun. I mostly for him, what I love is his characters. Like he does such a great job of writing. I feel like it's really hard to write consistent characters who you can get to know to the point where you can begin to anticipate what kinds of things they're going to do and how they're going to react to things, and yet to constantly surprise you and have the characters do amazing, surprising things and write stories that totally catch you off guard. Yeah, like, that is a really hard balance to strike. It is, and he does that so well, like all the time. So especially like his finished series, or his, you know, Dresden Files is almost finished. Like it's been out for a long time. There's a lot of content where you get to know his characters over time and you can see that progression. Like that is definitely something I'm hoping for with Far Shore Chronicles, because there's more content there that by the end, you know, you spent so much time with these characters, and hopefully I do an adequate job of, you know, bringing them to life, that they feel like family, and, you know, they feel like people that you want to spend time with, or that you would like to hang out with, or, you know, like people that you actually know that are real to you, and not just like, you know, little silhouettes that, you know, I'm just doing this with. So that's a short hit list. Gosh, I could keep going. There's so many just phenomenally talented authors in the world, but those are the first ones that come to mind. Okay. It's a good list to have. It's a really good list. Because, you know, I mean, they are... And I mean, like, I know, like, there's part of it is that, like, oh, I should be trendy and name people that nobody knows. But, like, there's a reason everyone knows them. That's because they're so good, you know. They're so amazing. And frankly, those are the authors who, like, shaped me the most when I was younger. Like, I came up reading those books. Like, I remember when I was in early college and I almost failed a final because I got, you know, the Dresden Files box set, and I could not for the life of me stop flipping reads. I was like, it's 3 a.m. Like, I need to finish this term paper, but god damn, I need to know what happens. And I pulled it off. It was okay, but like, I was whatever. I was like 20 and stupid. And I feel like, though, in the grand scheme of things, that's a pretty fantastic way to... a reason to fail a final. It was close. I mean, I didn't fail the final, but it was like, I was like, oh, geez, now it's 2 a.m. So that means I have about 6 hours to like finish this term paper before I have to go to class. And I made it work, but is that, you know, that association of like, I think there are authors in books who like, they get into your psyche because you read them at pivotal times in your life. Like it's the right combination of, you know, an amazing story and the right kind of character for the season of life that you're in and what you're experiencing and what you're going through. Yes. That like, even when you go back and read them later, it's not quite the same thing because it was just a perfect, you know, and those are some of the authors that hit me in that way at exactly the right time. So part of it is, I guess, just like super nostalgia bias, but I would love nothing more than for my books to affect someone else in the same way in their life. Like that there's a moment where they read something I wrote and it actually stays with them and maybe is helpful or encouraging, or just, I don't even know. I don't even think you can put it into fully conscious literal terms, like what stories can do for us. It's not so much like, oh, I learned something, but they become part of us, and sometimes in ways or at times where we really need that, whatever that is. So yeah. Although, to be fair, all of that is absolutely accurate, but I also feel like I learned more from my books than I did from a lot of my textbooks in school. Oh, absolutely. I think books are some of the like, it's just what I love so much about stories. It's the one way that humans have ever found to like break time. Like you have your one life, right? You're on this linear path. And one of the great like ironies and challenges of life is that typically the things we learn and the ways that we grow and get better as people come at the cost of the mistakes that we made. So it's like, I can look back at my life like, oh my gosh, I was such an idiot. Like, why did I do that? I know that now because I made that mistake, and I can't go back and relive that season with the benefit of what I learned from it. I have to just do my best to take it forward. Yeah. But with books, like you can actually, I mean, there's a lot of very interesting science about what happens in your brain, but like you cathartically engage almost as if it was happening to you. Like you physiologically experience when you're reading a story, you actually, and you fully engage it. It's your mind doesn't fully perceive the difference between it happening to you and not happening to you. It's close to lived experience in your brain. And so you actually get the benefit of like living out a life or a set of choices. Then you can almost like, I look at it as like it's the only way we've figured out to like have immortality. You can live an infinite number of lives and have an infinite number of experiences, and you can actually take those experiences and be changed by them, gain the benefit of wisdom from things that happen. Like, okay, this character did this and then this happened. If an author does a good job and it's not, moralistic or too dialectic, like it's actually authentic and it's a good reflection of real human experience, then that's a real human experience that you can engage and get something from and gain the benefit of the outcome without having to actually take the time to live it, make that mistake, and then like it's the only other way we have of learning, like is the normal way or growing or changing. Right. So like I love that about stories. I think they're some of the most powerful things in the universe because they literally let us like break time space and there's I don't know. I'm obviously very interested in this topic.
Then that was a very interesting subject.
I've done a lot of reading on like the science of your neurologic. What happens to you neurologically when you're reading a story? What does your brain do, and how do we engage with these things? Because I just find it fascinating. I think it's really interesting.
Very fascinating. Ooh, and it's a great excuse for me to go read more books.
Exactly. Hey, this is important, guys. Like I'm putting in my time here. This is not just escapism.
No, it's very important. Oh, that's okay. I think that's fascinating research. I should probably go find out more about that because, wow. I mean, I love breaking the time-space continuum in my books itself, but I'm happy to do it in real life too. If I can.
It's like, hey, you can do it literally and non-literally.
Yeah, that's great. All right, well, it has been absolutely fantastic talking with you. Is there anything else you'd like to add, writing related or otherwise?
I guess, so the only other thing maybe to add is if you want to connect with me and hang out, I have a fan group on Facebook. That's a private group called the Far Shore Voyagers. You can just search Far Shore Voyagers on Facebook. You'll find it and just request to join. Come hang out with us there. It's a really fun bunch of people. And I do a lot of like behind the scenes, like setting information, like I talk about like I've been doing like race profiles and character profiles there, and I give updates. A lot of times I'll do special access stuff, like that's where I pulled my beta listeners for my audiobook. So if you really enjoy the books and you want to hang out more with me, get more live updates about what I'm kind of from the writer's desk kind of things, and honestly just meet a bunch of other really cool fantasy fans, and we're all nerds and we like hanging out and doing stuff. That's a really fun group, so come join us there. And other than that, August 13th, hopefully if this kind of stuff sounds like your kind of book, check it out when it comes out.
I'm very curious now because it sounds like fun, huge amounts of fun. And I'll be sure to include all of the information about the book and your Facebook group and all of that whatnot in the description box because, clickable links are fun.
Links are key, right, man? Yeah. Who has time to search stuff anymore?
Well, especially not with the algorithms.
Yes. Oh my gosh.
I have the continuous battle with Google and Amazon because, I search for indie authors pretty much every day. And they always show me the traditional stuff.
Yeah. I'm very confused. Do you mean J.K. Rowling? Like, no, actually, I did not mean that. I really don't. I meant J.A. Andrews. Thank you very much.
Yeah, exactly. All right. Well, have a fantastic day. Go out and cause some trouble or, don't get caught causing trouble, whichever
Hey, I don't leave my house anymore, so I can get into all the trouble I want.
That's true. I mean, I'm trying to think the last time I went somewhere besides the grocery store.
It's probably a thought best not considered too closely.
I mean, to be fair, I didn't really go out a whole lot before the pandemic because I was busy doing book things, but
now it's like
a little sad when I can't even remember.
Now it's not my choice. Yeah. It's for me. It's grocery stores and now parks with my daughter, which has been great. Like that is my like saving grace is to take her out and let her go nuts on our parks in our area that have reopened and are relatively safe, I think. So that's been helpful. Like, oh right, sunshine and clouds. I forgot about those.
Yeah, the whole vitamin D thing that you get from sun that you kind of need for just like
push your face up against a window and try to survive.
Not quite the same.
No, it's not. It's not.
Not quite the same. Oh, well. Well, anyways, good luck with your release.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me on. It was really fun talking.